From Suffolk, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Gentleman may proceed.
Speaker, yesterday we heard a couple of floor speeches about Medicaid expansion. And while I don't have any charts today or maybe any real thing to add to yesterday's conversation, we did have, I think, a well-written article today in the Richmond Times-Dispatch called Medicaid Expansion Seen as a Lifeline. And I guess about a week and a half ago, some of us had met with the governor, now governor, then governor-elect, talking about Medicaid expansion. And I think if you read the article and you saw it highlighted, I think there are $100 million in Medicare cuts, and I would use the term Medicare cuts, that are coming to Virginia hospitals as a result of the Affordable Care Act, which many know as Obamacare. I would say that the examples of these cuts are DRGs, which are diagnostic-related groups. Embedded in the agreement that was, I guess, signed off on several years ago was a 1% cut that would work up to a 2% cut over a 5-year period that would reach 2% by 2017. And also there are some cuts on value-based purchasing. And the reason I get up today to talk about this is that we've heard a lot about Medicaid expansion fixing the problem with the issues that the hospitals are dealing with today. Well, you might have read that they have delayed the DISH, or the disproportionate share cuts, which is part of the Medicaid expansion discussion that occurred several years ago, in 2015. It has been moved back 2 complete years. And if you look at the impact, we had talked with the Hospital and Healthcare Association, asked them to provide some figures to us, and they provided to me a spreadsheet or a chart that indicated the cuts that would be in place in 14 and 15, 16 and 17. And they provided it to me for the Affordable Care Act cuts, for sequestration, and then for what would be called Medicaid DISH cuts. And I would note that those DISH cuts do not come until 2016, and it's $5.3 million in 2016, and it's $19.8 million in 2017, and it's $22 million in 2018. And the reason I felt I needed to get up today and just talk about Medicaid expansion is I wanted to be very clear what we're trying to do from a responsible perspective, I think, in the House with the Merck Commission and with just the things that we feel are very important. I have invited the Hospital and Healthcare Association to speak to the full Appropriations Committee on Monday, and I would encourage all of you who have an interest in that to attend. I've asked them to present what they get. They presented to myself and the staff director this morning to the body so we can discuss it and contemplate it. My position has been pretty clear from the beginning, of many of my colleagues on this side, is that if we are going to expand, then we would have to have reforms that are in place. While it's true to say that reforms have begun, the reforms themselves have not been in place for a period of time to be able to determine if they are going to save us money. And we've heard that if you don't accept the money, then the deal doesn't work, because we get free money now, we've been told, and then we have to pick up 90% in 3 or 4 years. Well, I'm a pretty simple guy, and if you look at apples and oranges, the apples would be the Medicare cuts, and the oranges would be the Medicaid cuts. And while I would agree that the fruit basket for the Hospital Association and the like, they have a fruit basket, we cannot control the apples. We can only control the oranges. So when I look at what we have to do in a responsible way, I feel very strongly that we've got to get the reforms in place, because in my tenure on appropriations, which is now in my 13th year, I think I've served on the Health and Human Resources Subcommittee for 10 of those years. The largest growing segment of our budget has been Medicaid. And so I think what we did last year in conference, we collectively, this body, that body, the governor signed it, was to say that we have a commission in place that would work to do their job, to make sure that if we were going to go that route, that in fact those reforms, those would be in place so we would know that we had a pathway forward. And the other analogy I'd like to use, for those who say we have free money, we should do it now, it'll work out in the end. In, I think, 2021, it will cost us $300 million a year at 10%. And they say if you don't do it today, it doesn't work, because you've got to get the savings when it's 100%. And Jimmy Massey, Delegate Massey, can appreciate this. If someone is going to give you a business and saying, we'll give you and take care of the operating expenses for 2 years, and then after that you're on your own, you would never agree to do that until you were sure that the expenses were going to be what you thought they were going to be once that money went away. The difference is, Delegate Massey could sell that business potentially, but we cannot, because once we were to go that route, we would not turn back from that position. So I think the prudent approach is to let the Merck Commission do their job, which they're doing. We're going to listen to what the hospitals and the other advocacy groups have to say. That's what we should do and what we need to do. But there is no urgency on our part, because the oranges in our basket that we control, that impact does not occur until 2016, 2017, and 2018. And the cumulative impact of that is less than $50 million from our perspective of what our hospitals would lose. And I think the last thing I would add, and some would argue that, when this deal was done in Washington, well, we're not Washington. We have to have a balanced budget. I think the deal was a bad deal for the country and the way it was put together. They made certain assumptions, and those assumptions have not come to pass because of the actions of the Supreme Court. So I do not think we should be forced into an action because of a bad decision that was initially made into how they would construct this. So that is what we will be doing on the ninth floor. We'll be taking a very measured approach to make sure that, in fact, at the end of the day, that we know what the cuts are, why those cuts are there, and whose cuts they are. But I do not think it is fair to this body to say that if we do not expand, we are injuring certain groups, because those cuts are Medicare. They're not Medicaid. And Medicare is a federal program, not a state program. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing most all of you, hopefully, on Monday afternoon at the Appropriations Committee as we debate this most important issue.